Hello all, welcome to NHRD Pune YouTube channel. I'm Neena Kamal, back with another episode of PeoplePoint. Today's episode is actually very special to me personally because today I get to talk to my teacher, my guru, my role model, and my ex-boss from my first job. Please welcome Dr. Rajgopalan Purushothaman, Head of Learning for Jio Learning Initiatives. In his rich, close to 4 decades of experience, Sir has donned many hats, like heading product and retail academies to heading national sales teams. He's very passionate about building strategic L&D solutions, creating business impact measurements through various OD tools. He has facilitated more than 1,000 workshops on emotional intelligence, leadership, and managerial development in more than 30 large organizations. He is IIMT Ghaziabad alumni and visiting faculty at IIM Indore. He has won many awards, like the Gold Award from the Global Brandon Hall, USA. He is an accomplished scholar with a PhD in story-based animated digital assessment. He has published a book titled Emotional Intelligence, Reaching Escape Velocity in Digital Era with Sage Publishers. Apart from being a mentor, coach, and advisor to many organizations and many individuals, Sir keeps motivating people like me by stretching his own personal boundaries all the time. Like in 2020, he has summited Mount Kilimanjaro. So I can just go on, but for time being, Sir, welcome. And it's an absolute honor to have you on PeoplePoint. Thank you so much for taking out time.
Thank you very much indeed for this opportunity, and thanks for the score. Very kind words, Neena. Is always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So we actually can talk to sir about so many subjects, but we're going to take this opportunity and discuss emotional intelligence gem, uh, self-regulating habits. The world actually has seen so many problems in last few years. There was pandemic, then there is a war going on, and there is economic downturn happening all over the world. Many of us have faced adversities in our personal or professional life in last few or years. Some of us deal with them better than others. Now, this capacity to face these challenges, maintaining emotional balance, is strength of self-regulating habits. And today we're going to talk to Sir about that. So, sir, can you just share with us what do we mean by self-regulating habits? What are they? How do we learn them? And why do they become so crucial for our emotional strength?
That's a wonderful question to pose ourselves, and thanks for extending it to me as well. The World Economic Forum publishes the Future Skills Report every year.
Yes.
Since 2017, every year the report has been published. Among one of the significant future skills, emotional intelligence has occupied a place consistently. And I'm not surprised because of the same reason that you mentioned. The complexities of the world is enhancing in personal sphere as well as professional and world over.
Absolutely.
So the ability to manage your emotions in the most difficult situations of your life mars or makes your career and your professional or your personal life for that matter. I think it's our duty to teach that to our children as well. So that's the best gift we can pass on to the next generation.
Absolutely.
So that is one. And I also request you that the stories I might narrate might look very extreme, but in reality, we all might fall somewhere in between.
Okay.
And if at all you want to measure yourself, at the end of my book, I've given a strength finder. So you can take this opportunity to measure yourself and see where you stand. But all of us will have different scale of development in different components of emotional intelligence. So with that prelude, let me narrate the story. This is the first story. It's so simplistic for that matter. We might see that every day in our life, but we tend to ignore the thought behind it. So I thought I'd reinforce the story. In the society where I was, the skyscraper where I was living in Mumbai, there's a car park. And I found, just walking by the car park one day, a couple of years back, that a visitor had parked the car in the wrong car park, which happened very often. Could be out of ignorance or because lack of civic sense. So that's a different issue. The owner of the car, the car park, who was just passing by, noticed this, and he called the security person and started shouting at him and yelling at him at the top of his voice. Now, the security guy was apologetic. He said, I didn't notice, but at the same time, he went on and on. So he stood there and he insisted to call every intercom in the building, get that person right here. So this when the security guy ran up, the couple of people were calling up frantically, and with great difficulty identified a person who had parked the car, of course, which is not a good thing to do. They identified this and he just walked over to the car park. And the owner, the rightful owner of the car park, took off on that person. He never knew him before and started showering harsh words on him and to the brink of being abusive, but very harsh. So the person was polite initially, but after some time, when the conversation was stern, he reciprocated. And there was a big argument there. So this went on for 15, 20 minutes. There's a bunch of people who had accumulated there to watch the proceedings. And this went on for half an hour. And then the owner walked away in a huff. He got into a lift, went back to his house. And the neighbors could hear the discontentment and the anger for nearly half a day, because he was showering. He was dispensing his anger and emotions on his own spouse and children. And half a day, the environment at his home was not so conducive. So he carried the residue of his anger from the car park back to his home. And being a weekend, half the day was lost in this ordeal, for that matter. Now, as time would call it, a few weeks later, a similar incident happened with one more neighbor. And the car was parked there. And the owner saw that and he asked the security guy that, what's the flat number? So he took the lift and walked up to that particular flat and rang the bell because someone had parked the car wrongly in this car park of the B I'm talking about now. And when the owner came out, he exchanged a few pleasantries, checked his welfare and said, I've not seen you for the walk since a few days. And then he said, someone at your home who has visited your home has parked the car in my car park. So the owner was instantly apologetic. Then he went back and called someone, and both of them, the owner and the visitor, they came down, took the car away, apologized again. They had a few exchange of pleasantries, and then he walked back. Now, this was not an isolated incident. The person A was always a touch me not kind of a person. Most of the neighborhood would hardly interact with him. And he was kind of a touch me not person. So not so popular, not so effective. But the second person opinion was very much regarded. He was respected. It's not because of the incident at the car park. So this is a difference. I think if you want to summarize it, the incident and the environment and the situation was exactly the same.
Absolutely.
But what is the difference is the way someone managed the emotions at that point.
Absolutely.
I want to just park here for you to reflect on this thought. So simple in life. So someone said your life is an outcome of the responses of your emotions that you give to situations every moment.
Absolutely. And the example which you have given is so common. I mean, we see such examples all around us.
Very true. And they pass it away because of ignorance, a lack of education on emotional intelligence. And unfortunately, some of the less educated people in terms of emotional intelligence will even glorify this virtue. It's probably indicated as a sign of manliness of dispensing your anger at the drop of your hand, and probably our movies have glorified it beyond extent. Absolutely. That if you want to, a real man will actually kick the door and walk in to get things done. But that's not the way things happen in life, by the way.
Very true, sir. That this is such a common thing, and it happens all the time. I mean, being a mother, being a like wife, I sometimes I know that I'm taking out one frustration of one situation on another, and I feel somewhere, as you rightly said, being conscious of the fact that okay, maybe I'm frustrated because I'm running short of time, or maybe I have something else going on in my head. Probably that awareness, bringing your mind back to that awareness, probably is
Right.
one of the ways.
Yeah, that's right. So it actually starts, emotional intelligence starts with a simple step towards being self-aware.
Yes.
So unfortunately, many of us are not even aware of the emotions that we experience that experiencing at that point of time. This ignorance leads to inability to manage your emotions. So being aware of your
Yes.
own self, the physical awareness is one dimension. Being aware of your surroundings and your people around you, being that's one dimension. That's comparatively simpler. But being aware of your emotions at any point of time is a difficult proposition. It's more needed for emotional depth. If you want to, you cannot, give a better example of lack of self-awareness than if you think about the people who take the extreme step of ending their life,
Absolutely.
committing suicide for them. Now, do you? Many of them would not even know that they are going through a depression. They are going through that sorrow. If it looks to be a very illogical step for people who are observing as externally, but for that person, because they're not even aware of the emotions that they're going through at that time and the extent on which the emotion has engulfed them, and they tend to take that extreme step. So let me put it this way: emotions are one of the most important and the precious gifts in our life.
Absolutely.
First, as I wanted to say that human beings are nothing but a bundle of emotions. We relate, we connect, we love, we exchange ideas, we live together because of the exchange of emotions. If emotions are devoid, I don't think so we would be able to live. Someone said there's not a single action that we ever take in our life without an emotion behind it. So that's the power of the emotion. But at the same time, if the emotions are not managed well, it can become detrimental. It can become the very reason for being ineffective. So that's the importance of managing emotions. So
Very
without any doubt in my mind, whenever I think of the most successful people, most effective people in my life, so I normally recommend one small thought. Just shut your eyes and think of one person, just one person in your life that has really influenced you, and you will walk back to that person to take advice or an opinion and consult that person when you're in deep trouble or when you need advice or when whose opinion that you will respect. If you open your eyes and think about that person, invariably you will find that person with good emotional intelligence, would
absolutely.
be a good listener, will not jump into conclusion with the very first word that you speak. So that is the importance of emotional intelligence that we attach, but it's time that we also invest in developing it in ourselves.
When my daughter was very, very young, and I that time had a very hectic job, and mornings used to be like the worst time of the day because I had to get myself ready, I had to get her ready, and then my husband is fortunately very, very supportive, but even then there would be days when I'm extremely stressed out, running against the time. And at that time I actually started doing this without any thoughts. One day just I was trying to get her ready, and I it came to my mind, and I started playing a game with her. So I used to tell her that this there is this window, so my anger is sitting in that window, and if you I used to play this very dramatic thing that okay, if you don't do this right now, my anger is going to come to my head. Oh my god, it is coming down like that. I didn't do it intentionally at that time. I actually didn't know what I'm doing. But it helped me so much because at that time I could realize that my anger is out of my body, and I could, like, play around with it. It helped me to control my frustrations in that moment, I feel. So some of these ways we need to learn constantly to manage our personal and professional life situations, isn't it, sir?
Very true. It's such a beautiful exercise that I picked this up from you today. Is nothing but institutionalizing self-awareness that the anger is outside me, it's traveling towards me, etc.
Yes.
Is the ability to see the being aware of the emotions. That's what is self-awareness is. So unless you are self-aware, you can't do anything else in emotional intelligence. That's a very important and a first step, very first step. So because you added this, there are only two ways. There are two ways on which human beings can build self-awareness. And I don't want to sound theoretical, but unfortunately, there's no other mechanism. One is introspection, the ability to reflect upon one's behavior, a person's behavior. End of the day, you start thinking the way you spoke, the way you responded to situations in life, with your child, with your husband, with your parents, with your friends, with your colleagues in organization. So the human being has got a wonderful ability to reflect. Introspection is only gifted to human beings. Unfortunately, dogs can't introspect, despite whatever imagination that you have, but no animal can introspect. The concept of self, ability to you become an external observer to your own behavior, is only possible with human beings. And some people don't utilize it for that matter. So you are institutionalizing self-awareness in the example of showing the anger is sitting in the window. And the other way to develop self-awareness is to listen to feedback. When someone else points out to you, this was the way that you behaved or responded to situation, and you being open to this. So there are two windows, a ventilator for you to develop your self-awareness is introspection and ability to listen to others' feedback and learn from that to improve your behavior, understand your emotions better. So these are the two dimensions which I want to. Thank you very much for that great example.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Separation from emotion and action actually has been a huge learning.
Very true. Very, very beautifully said. When we are in my book, when I dealt about a chapter called Driving with Emotional Intelligence, and one of the steps is being looking into the mirror. Is we always be conscious about the choice of words that you use, despite the fact in whatever state of emotion that you are. So I can connect it to looking into the mirror while you're driving your car. So be conscious about the environment. But whom are you talking? What is the choice of language? What is the situation? Is it the right time to talk about this? Is the right person? Is it the right way? That's nothing but emotional intelligence. So Aristotle once put it that it's so very easy to get angry on a person, but it's so difficult to get angry at the right person for the right reason, at the right time, in the right way. And that's emotional intelligence for you, summarized thousands of years back. So that's that ability to be conscious about the way you think, act, speak is the evidence of emotional intelligence. So if you allow me, I'll go to the second story. So this again, this is a CEO of one of the businesses where I was working, and there were some challenges faced by the direct reportees of that CEO. He was running a business. He was a very intelligent person in the conventional sense of very high IQ, very good in mathematical and logical intelligence, very aware of the business, very conscious about, very good in numerics and analysis, analytical skills to a certain extent, even decision making was very sharp for that matter. So intelligence in all the conventional sense of good IQ for that matter. So, but he had a set of direct reportees who are the CFOs, the operations head. All of them are senior people with more than 25 years of experience. They all were not very happy working under him because he was more of a very dominating boss. He will not listen to anyone's opinion. And that too, they are very senior people who are as experienced as him. So they were finding it very difficult to work under him. And they knew there are certain things not happening well in the business, but he would just not listen to anyone. And this was a little extreme. And the message went to the management. The CHRO, who is a good friend of mine, he had a session with him, called him over to the headquarters and spoke to him, had a lunch meeting with him and explained to him that this is not the way they should be operating, because you will not you can't garner the support of your team members if you don't listen to them. So you might disagree to them, you might not accept their point of view, but you cannot be a person who can't even listen to them, and you just drive your own agenda. So you lose. It was a lot of counseling which happened, but it didn't work for that matter. So then the CHRO asked me that, can you fly down and conduct a kind of a workshop with that senior management? So about 14, 15 senior people, all the direct reporters. So we took them to an offsite, with not a conventional offsite. I exactly knew the agenda. The agenda for me on the whole framework of a lot of management activities, I had to drive this feedback to him. But I couldn't make it appear that the feedback is only for him. I had to package it as though the feedback is for everyone else. So there was a 360-degree tool done, and I used that environment to everyone was giving feedback on everybody in a very structured way after we softened up. And they all enjoyed the session, and there were a lot of serious discussion which happened. So in the turn of this gentleman whose CEO came for receiving feedback, so a lot of feedback was given, and I ensured that it was packaged as a little later part of the program, so everyone was free to exchange and accept. He could see a lot of people exchanging feedback and people accepting it. So his turn came, so he took a paper and wrote down everything and said, okay, this is interesting, I made a note of this. He did everything. And it appeared to be that he's going to make a serious attempt. All the message was given to him in the format of a 360, in a structured, in a very simple and effective manner. He observed it, he absorbed it, he understood. And he walked away. And after a couple of days, when he met with the team, I got to know that he said, what you heard there in that workshop, it was interesting, but I have nothing to do with that feedback. I'm going to be the way I am because I know this is right. I went on with the same thing. So all the investment that we did, he was very, very stubborn in understanding others' opinion about him. In other words, his self-awareness was extremely poor. He never knew that what is wrong with him. And he believed that he had insulated himself from the world completely. Unfortunately, he didn't stay on as a CEO for long. Not because of anyone's wish. He was moved out of that position. It took about a couple of months after that. And the team had escalated it again. I think we couldn't do anything more for a senior person rather than to more than one individual conversation with him and the kind of a workshop. We invested a lot of time and energy in this. He was absolutely blind towards his own self-awareness. And unfortunately, he couldn't help himself, forget about others helping him. Logical intelligence. IQ determines your growth initially. But after you join an organization and you take up a profession, it's the EQ which takes over. It's the 80-20 ratio. There's a research which indicates, Daniel Goleman, for that matter, indicated that the success probability is 80% due to emotional intelligence, only 20% due to IQ. IQ is important, but that's not drives you towards the ulterior success in your life, for that matter. So that's what I want to narrate the second story for you. The third story or real life instance that I want to share with you is about a colleague of mine who was reporting to me. And he was an extremely short-tempered person, in the sense it was very difficult for him to get along with anyone within the team or across the team. He would have so many people who walk up to me and said he spoke to us rudely, he's not cooperating, is very arrogant. This was a very, very common feedback that I used to get. I have spent many, many occasions taking out for lunch and having a conversation with him. And he will open up and say, yes, there's something wrong with me. I understand. Thanks for sharing this with me. I'm sure I'm going to make this change. So I used to talk about his lifestyle. I would go to a lot of conversation. Not once he would ever resist my feedback. And he will genuinely agree to the point. He will feel apologetic about it and say, no, this is something that I need to change. But after a couple of days, his behavior will exactly be the same. I'm not exaggerating. I would have spent at least 15, 20 1-hour sessions with him over a period of 1 or 2 years that he spent with me. And it just never could happen for that matter. So I remember one instance, I said, I'll take this as an experiment. I'll tell you, okay, Mr. A, in the next 3 minutes, I'm going to make you feel angry, right? Be on the difference. He said, no, I'll never be angry. You try it out. So if I give a warning to him right now, within 3 minutes, I will make one statement, he will become angry again. Despite the fact that you give an advance warning to him, in that conversation, I said, I'm going to upset you in the next 3 minutes.
He will get
And after that, he will not be controlled. He said, no, you said something like that, but how can I not get angry? He will justify it. The next day, he'll say, no, I shouldn't have done that. Now, I've never seen a person with such amount of short temper and absolutely an inherent habit and addicted to it, and he could never get rid of it. So again, self-awareness is of such low level, and second would be the self-regulation. Now, the most important thing in emotional intelligence and practicing emotional intelligence is self-regulation. Because many of us, despite the fact that we know and we become aware of the emotion that we are experiencing it, we can't control it. We can't manage it. We can't regulate it. In fact, the right expression is regulation, not control. Control is suppressing that emotion. You're feeling angry, but you're suppressing it, and it's not good for you. The ability to ignore, the ability to address, the ability to ignore, address, or even respond later. These are choices that we make when you're dealing with emotions. So that's what self-regulation is all about. Self-regulation is about the choices that you make when you're faced with stimulus or difficult situation. Absolutely. And your life is an outcome of the hundreds of thousands of small choices that you make. To get angry or not to get angry. To counsel or not to counsel. To ignore or not to ignore. Imagine you start addressing and all the stimulus around you, happenings around you, is impacting your emotions. What a miserable life that we will lead. That the environment is actually controlling your emotions, your happiness, your mood, your anger, not your choices. So I love that expression by Viktor Frankl, that the ultimate freedom of a man or a woman is the ability to make his or own choices in the most difficult situation of life.
Very true.
You know, choices in a very good and happy situation is not a big deal. When things are not going in your favor, when you're in a very difficult situation, at that time you're able to make a choice of ignoring or being happy, choosing to be happy, despite the fact the environment is not in your favor. That needs tremendous amount of self-regulation. The height of self-regulation is able to make a choice in the most difficult situation of being happy or ignoring it, for that matter. And that's the power of emotional intelligence, the ability to drive that and manage your self-regulation. It reaches you to the pinnacle. I recommend the book called The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which is about the experiences in the Nazi concentration camp. And he calls it as the logotherapy, the ability to make your choices in the most difficult situation. So it's a lovely read. You know, one of the books which changed my life was that more than two decades back when I read it for the first time. So that's the now other important question, Neena, would be, okay, we talked about self-awareness, self-regulation. Of course, self-awareness and self-regulation leads to self-motivation. Self-motivation is the inherent drive to get things done, the result orientation, the goal orientation. If you're good in 1 and 2, self-awareness and self-regulation, It drives towards better self-motivation. If you're good in all the three, self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-motivation, you're bound to be able to deal with other people with empathy better and also develop social skills. So it starts with self and then goes with the others. But I think in my book as well, I spent around a significant part of the book in how to develop emotional intelligence rather than talking about it. So I want to put that in a nutshell, but I can tell you that it's absolute common sense, but not probably commonly practiced. So there are three pillars for developing emotional intelligence. And if you try this, I can assure you without an exception that will work in your favor, anyone's favor for that. First way to develop emotional intelligence is meditation. You'll be surprised to know there's so much of scientific literature available that a direct relationship between managing your emotions and meditation. When you do any form of chosen meditation, there's so many forms of meditation, you choose whichever suits you the best.
Very true.
Meditation is nothing but the ability to live in that moment, right? You're cutting off the past, the guilt of the past, and the anxiety of the future, and you're living on the current moment for some time. That's the principle of all meditation, whether it's mindfulness or yoga or breathing exercise for that matter. When you do that, it gives you the ability to regulate your emotions better. It builds in the neuroplasticity to deal with the emotions better. It rewires your brain and helps you to handle emotions better. The second important thing is, and mind you, you don't need any scientific proof, though there are so much of literature, scientific literature published on that, but you can experience it your own self. When you do a physical activity of a jog or a walk or playing a game, when you have a physical activity, it helps you develop your emotional intelligence. Of course, scientifically, it throws off the cortisol in your body and generates hormones, including testosterone in your body, adrenaline in your body to make you happy for that matter. So it manages your emotions when you do a physical activity. The third is your sleeping habits. If you have a proper good sleep of minimum 7 hours a day, and of course, good healthy food habits, all of them put together, nutritious, balanced food, it's all together develops a mechanism for developing good emotional intelligence. And it's nothing new that we have talked about, right? But the cumulative impact you would be seen. That's meditation. And the second I call is resilience. To build your resilience, let me put it in a figurative way. To lead the challenges of your life, you need some emotional reservoir. Imagine it's a big tank, right? Every day you're going to have challenges. You gave the example of the morning schedule of getting a child ready to school, your work pressure, going to office. It all dispenses and drains some emotions out of you, right? Imagine you have a big container. Of course, I don't want you to carry the container on your head. So imagine the whole container of emotions. It gets dispensed, it gets leaked every day during the course of the day. If you do not fill your emotional reservoir, if you don't recharge your emotional reservoir, you drain out faster in the day. So the emotional reservoir is recharged by meditation, balanced food, physical exercises, sound sleep. It's the best way to recharge your batteries, emotional reservoir batteries, if I can put a modern terminology to it. Otherwise, you will have to have drained battery right in the morning. You're going to don't know what to do with your emotions for that. The last pillar I want to talk about is compassion. There's very interesting research that when you're compassionate with people, it develops your emotional intelligence. So always think about someone who has dedicated their life for serving someone else. Genuinely sacrifice the whole life, and they only see happiness in serving others, doing social service. Don't you see a sense of calmness in them? You find that they are very calm and composed. So compassion towards others recharges your emotional intelligence to a great extent.
But being kind to yourself is, I think, also very important. And
very true, man. Absolutely, man. No doubt about it. Please go ahead.
and the second thing which I learned during COVID in the lockdown is that one of the things which help you to be sane is to be grateful, is for what you have.
I cannot agree with you more. For example, being compassionate to your own self. If you cannot do justice to investing yourself in the aspect that we talked about, if you don't have an appointment for your own self, no point giving appointments to others. Right? You have to reserve certain time for yourself. That's how you'll do justice towards better justice towards others as well.
It has been amazing conversations, and I can't tell you how much we are going to take away from this. I'm sure our viewers are going to really benefit from this.
Well, thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, sir, for all this time you spent with us. And thank you to our audience for watching it. And please keep sharing, subscribing, and commenting on our episodes. Thank you.